Hello, everyone. My guest today is Tytunovich. He is the founder and CEO of Cheq, which he founded in 2016 with fellow graduates of the 8200 Cyber Intelligence Unit in the Israeli Army. Guy, you ready to take us to the top?
I am indeed.
All right, I want to put money in. One thing I've realized is you never bet against ex-Israeli Army folks. You guys, there's something about the program that just pumps out really smart software CEOs.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. I would concur, only not in my case. I am an exception to the rule. But yeah, I think one of the things that's so great that's made us kind of the startup nation, Israel, is the fact that to a certain sense we're a post-traumatic nation. When we're young teenagers, 18 years of age, we have to go to the army, and the nerds among us go to the defense intelligence, and they have to start learning stuff.
Is that what you did?
And yeah, I did. I
love
started my
that.
journey in hacking at 7 years old. My dad brought home a fax machine, and I thought, "Oh my God, what are there small people inside the fax?" And then shortly after, 11 years after, I got drafted to the defense intelligence and spent nearly a decade working on different cybersecurity fronts. Later on, also natural language processing, and yeah.
Okay, so now you're working on Cheq. So why do people have to, validate numbers that Facebook Power Editor is giving them in terms of their cost per click and their impression data and all that jazz?
That is an incredible question. The answer is, and it might surprise, I think, some of the viewers, listeners, but at the end of the day, I think companies like Google or Facebook are extremely reliable. I don't think we need to vet their numbers. What I do think, however, is, and I think Google and Facebook concur, is that there is a cybersecurity issue revolving around ad fraud, and it's a very specific and very expertise-based issue. And like in many, many different aspects, other than advertising or other than ad fraud, the likes of Facebook and Google sometimes need help. And their advertisers sometimes need help in really preventing those bad instances from happening.
Wait, so can you give me an example of like a really bad fraud case that Cheq, found across one of your customers?
Sure. So I can't go into too many specifics, including names and so on and so forth. But what I can tell you is that in a lot of the cases, what I used to do for the government really is similar to what I do now, or to what my company does now. I'll give you a small example. One of our clients is a very big, what we call an SSP, a supply side platform. They monetize traffic for publishers. About a year ago, we discovered a very targeted and sophisticated fraud case that was targeting specifically them. At first, we saw it on one side, and once we were finished, we saw it on around 100 sites. Then we needed to prove that these sites are interconnected. And the aim of these sites were to generate fake clicks for that SSP.
Interesting. Were all of these media, I'm going to make this up, it's like LatkaMagazine.com, LatkaContentMarketing.com, blah, 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 blah. It's not as obvious, but they're all kind of like in a same network. Were they all together, those companies, purposely doing this, or was there some bad actor targeting those media sites then to get to the supply side platform?
In that case, it was the site owners. So the site owners banded together specifically to defraud that SSP.
Interesting. This is a real problem? I mean, these are like big schemes to do this. Are
Yeah,
we
we
talking
saved
like
around 2
millions
million.
impressions?
Yeah, we're talking about billions of impressions in that case, and we saved about $2 million per month of activity, of revenue, of wasted revenue, of fraudulent revenue. And at the end of the day, in these cases, what's also important to note is that you said, for instance, blah, blah.com. It's exactly that. But in some cases, it's never, I would never accuse the likes of, Turner, Warner Media, et cetera, of doing bad things. They are not behind those kind of things. Yet these sites suffer too. In that case, in that example that I just gave, it's a bit of a different one because it was a bunch of small sites purposely designed and built to defraud that client of ours. But in a lot of cases, the big publishers also suffer from fraud. We call it nuclear windfall, basically. Obviously, it's not directed by the big publishers, but unfortunately, they're also targeted.
Interesting. Okay, let's get into your business model here for a second. So these folks pay you to make sure that they're getting what they think they're getting. You're preventing essentially ad fraud. Give me a general target. And you have so many different cohorts that you serve just based off your website and your pricing. We don't have time to go down all of them, but give me like a sweet spot. On average, what's the company going to pay you to use your technology?
Oh, it really depends. It really varies on the volumes of traffic that they would buy. I'd say that a tier one, massive international advertiser, think brands like the P&Gs of the world and the Unilevers of the world, the ones that spending billions of dollars yearly on digital advertising, they would pay in the realm of up to around $1.5 million a year.
Okay.
The large platforms that aggregate a lot of traffic would pay slightly more than that.
Now, is that are you giving me like your top 2% of your customers, or is that a fair average? Is about $1 million a year across?
No, it's more. I wish it was the average. It's not top 2%, but I'd say it's top 30%. I think the average, generally speaking, is at around $20,000 a month.
Okay.
So $250,000 a year.
Yep. Okay, cool. And the reason I ask that is because it will affect the rest of my questions related to how you built your internal sales motions, things like that. So this is clearly an enterprise sales motion.
Yeah, of course.
So break your team down for me. How many folks on the team right now, and how many of them are engineers?
So we have around 100, the vast majority of which are engineers, mostly based in Tel Aviv.
Yep.
When
you say majority, you mean like 70 or 80 of them?
If I'm not mistaken, around 70.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Are you an engineer by trade?
I am. Not a very good one, but I am by training.
All right. So 70 folks are engineers. And then again, let's jump over to the sales side. So I imagine you probably have folks with quota. How many quota carrying reps do you have?
Everyone else pretty much,
okay.
Except for maybe G&A. Except for G&A, about 15 quota attaining personnel.
So look, one of the things that is critical to scaling a SaaS company, especially if you have an inside sales team where your ACVs are at your level, is making sure you get your new salesperson profitability and pro formas right. The onboarding time, the quota targets, the profitability per sales rep. How did you, when you hired your first salesperson, where did you put a stake in the ground, and how have you had to edit that stake over your first 14 hires?
You're jumping into conclusions that I actually put my stake on the stake in the ground. I was absolutely clueless. I learned the hard way. I think maybe the best way, but the hard way, by failing, by making mistakes. And in this case as well, I think at the end of the day, there came a time where I understood, and I think every entrepreneur, especially if it's a CEO who's also the founder, needs to understand, is that he needs to get help from people who whose expertise is business operations, people like you, people who have done it before, even multiple times. So what I did is I hired a COO of a company that was sold for nearly $1 billion to be my COO. And he really instilled all the business operations, quota attainment, new ACV methodology, and so on and so on. And he put his stake on the ground. Only after I failed miserably in doing it properly. That being said, I feel that our current process is fairly robust.
So what do you put if there's, I'm going to your Indeed page applying for a job to work at Cheq for your sales role. You hire me on day one. You're going to say, Nathan, just so you know, first year we expect you to hit quota of X. What is it typically?
For a junior salesman, that would be around $500,000 of annual added ACV, added ARR.
Over what period of time? My first year?
Annual, yeah, over the first year.
So, okay, and then when I get to full production, what do you put me at? Like $1 million in new bookings a year?
Year 2 is at $1 million. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and does it cap out there, or do you keep accelerating?
It caps out in terms of the quota, and yet it increases in terms of the bonus structure. So the bonus structure does improve with tenure or seniority.
Okay. So the reason I'm asking this is every CEO I've spoken with, and I don't know if you're in this range or not, but every CEO I've spoken with doing between like 50 and 150 million in ARR, they optimize for some amount of salesperson kind of profitability. And this is a function of what their on target earnings like quota is relative to their full comp at OTE. So what do you optimize? Is it 5x, 10x, 7x? What do you optimize your salesperson profitability for?
That is, again, a very good question. Basically, we are in a 50-50 between, roughly speaking. It does vary quite drastically depending on the person and the seniority and so, and even the vertical that he's selling to. But let's say it's 50-50.
What do you mean by that? Like half or 5x, half or 10x?
No, 50-50 in terms of the division between commission and base. And hence, the profitability is usually, because we don't put commission on the profitability margins, it's usually 5x. At the end of their profitability on the cost of customer acquisition is extremely high, and yet it's not due to the multiple on the salesman OTE.
So, Guy, let me role play with you. I'm a year 2 salesperson at your company. My quota target is $1 million. You're optimizing for a 5x return on me as a salesperson, which means my fully earned quota plus base is going to be about $200K, of which 100 is base and 100 is upsiding commissions if I hit quota. Almost. Commission would probably be higher in that case. Okay.
And also base would be a little higher. But yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Interesting to understand that. So when you obviously sales is just one function of your fully weighted customer acquisition cost. Will you spend the full year ACV, so 250 grand up front to acquire a customer? What payback do you optimize for?
So theoretically, yeah, we optimized to return to generate a return after 9 months of the entire customer acquisition cost.
Oh, that's great. So you have a 9-month payback right now.
Yeah. Well, that's what we optimized for. We actually surpassed it. I think that there comes a time at scale where obviously the sales funnel is very different for each vertical or for each type of client, for each size of client, and so on and so forth. In our case, we are predominantly targeting very big clients with very long sales funnels. Sometimes they are also very costly. So so I'd say that 9 months is a non-representative average. That being said, we do optimize for 9 months.
So you're saying you're better than across your cohorts right now. You're saying you're getting a payback in 6, 5, 4 months, something like that.
Yeah, I'd say 7, but okay. Yeah, I think it's not representative. I think that if we hit our goals this year, then if we hit our goals next year, then very likely it would pan out to be at around 9 months.
Okay, fair enough. All right, and then put this stuff on a timeline for me. So you're obviously in the Defense Department and Israeli military. What year did you write the first line of code for this?
For Cheq?
Yeah.
Probably first line of code. So This is late 2015, early 2016.
And first dollar of revenue was when?
A year and a half ago, 18 months ago.
Okay, so call it 2018 or 2017?
It's still 2017, okay. Unfortunately for my bookkeeper.
So I was gonna say, do you remember how much you spent on your MVP before your first dollar of revenue, like cash out the door?
Of course, unfortunately, of course I do.
How much was it?
So again, you need to be mindful that we did almost all of our development between the entrepreneurs, and back then we weren't.
Yeah, so it's a lot of sweat equity. But what was the cash out the door?
The cash out the door at the end of the day was around for the MVP again was around $750,000.
Wow. So the Israeli Defense Department pays a lot of money, right? You were rich.
In Israeli terms, a billionaire. No, I'm kidding. But yeah.
Where did you? No, in all seriousness, though. I mean, how did you fund that early capital? Did you raise on day one or what?
I started the company with 2 great founders. One of them is my chief technology officer, who's my best friend since we were 6 years old, and the other is my chairman. And my chairman put in the seed money.
I see. Okay, and how much total raised to date?
Around 30. Almost 30.
So much dilution, Guy. You had to raise all that money?
Oh, no dilution at all. They tell me that at the end I get my shares back.
Yeah, it's the bigger pie, Guy. Don't worry about it. It's going to be
exactly.
$2 billion exit. It doesn't matter.
2 billion. Why the insult? Way more than that.
I love the ambition. Okay, so first customer was
Yeah.
2017, 2018. How many are you now serving today?
I'm not at liberty to say, but I can. But what I can say is that it's between 100 and 150.
Okay, fair enough. So 100 minimum up to 150. And again, this is a split between, I think you said kind of supply side folks. And then, I mean, what you're also probably selling to agencies, publishers, platforms, brands, all of them, right?
Yeah, predominantly the demand side. So predominantly agencies and advertisers. I'd say the second kind of layer of customers comes from the platform side of things, both on the demand side and on the supply side. And then we do some work with the supply side as well, being the publishers.
Rarely do I see someone with your kind of story where ARR is more than funding raised. So I think I have a number wrong here. 100 customers minimum at that ARPU you told me earlier, 20 grand a month would put you at $2 million a month right now in revenue. Is that accurate or generally accurate?
No, the average is non-representative. So that is the median average. Yeah.
Okay, that doesn't make sense.
No, but basically what I'm saying is that at the end of the day, the 20% huge customers, we calculate them differently to calculate the average. The average client is not, for us, is not a division between the total revenue and the amount of clients. But yeah, you're not that far off.
When will you, I guess, I'll change my question.
Sure.
When do you think you'll break to a month? Do you think you can do that this year or it's going to take till next year?
As in break even monthly?
No. When do you think you're going to break 2 million in MRR?
We've already did that.
Oh, okay. So you are north of what I just said.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's fine. That's okay. That, by the way, that's higher than what I would have expected. So look, I mean, you're in a great position then. I mean, I think an entrepreneur in your case, anywhere where, if you can keep essentially your ARR about equal to your total funding, you're in a good leverage position. So you must be raising capital right now.
I'm actually not, because of that wonderful D word that you mentioned. But no, in all seriousness, I think when I'm a bit obsessive about everything I do, especially if it's work related, and I've been obsessing about this sentence that someone once told me. When's a good time to raise capital? Always. So with that in mind, we just finished raising our B round.
Oh, okay. When was that?
We haven't announced it yet.
Oh, okay. Very good.
Literally.
Breaking news, folks. There you have it. Guy, you just like me so much, you give me the insider news before it's out.
Exactly.
I was going to say, I'm looking at Crunchbase, and my research team has only 5 million in the company and a Series A in June of 2018. So that from Battery, which means you must have just raised, call it 25 about a month or two ago. Did Battery lead or did they sit out?
They're about, and yeah, Battery led.
Oh, very good. Well, that's obviously a very strong and good sign to have. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
All right. A couple other things here before we wrap up. So you're north of 2 a month today. I mean, year-over-year growth rate. I mean, were you half that a year ago? Where were you in terms of MR about a year ago? Do you remember?
Way less than half. Yeah, the growth has been. I can't go into too many specifics, but the growth has been.
Can you say it was?
Can
you say it's definitely north of X? Is that fair? Could you just put a floor on it?
Oh, the growth has been way north than 200%.
Oh, I mean, okay, great. That's good. All right, good. So less than $1 million a month a year ago, more than $2 million a month today, raised an additional round of capital. When you raise capital, kind of in terms of where you're at today, how many months, obviously you're going to say, we're going to hire these many people and our CAC's going to change and our ACV is going to change, but you're obviously looking at burn and you're buying yourself runway. How many months did you raise for, basically, when you look at your forecasted burn?
Considering the actual burn rate and where we are in terms of profitability, this is, again, I can't go into specific, but this is very significant runway.
But you'll scale. I mean, I imagine when you went into this next round of funding, because you're a smart guy, you try to be as close to break even as possible, so you could tell the investors, listen, we don't need the money, give me a better valuation, otherwise we're not going to raise.
Exactly.
But you're not going to raise that money and take the dilution unless you have plans to spend it. So you're going to grow burn, I think, here shortly. My question is just basically,
without a doubt.
Yeah. When you look at that,
if everything goes according to plan, we've bought ourselves around 3 years of runway.
I see. Okay, so you will basically won't take your burn. I mean, 3 years of runway, right? So you take 26 million divided by 36 months. It's like 700 grand a month. You basically won't drive burn any higher than about 700 grand a month as you look to deploy the capital you just raised.
Always, by the way, always. That's my rule. That is literally the number.
What,
It,
36
it took
months?
me a long. No, well, yeah, 36 months, but also 700.
Oh, yeah, that's good math, right? That's pretty quick.
Yeah, it took me way more time than if it just took you. Are you looking for a job, Nathan?
No, no, you would fire me in about 2 seconds. All right, so
I seriously doubt that. Yeah.
all right, so you're growing the company. This is all great stuff. Last question here before we wrap up. Churn's critical in a SaaS company. I'm hoping you tell me your net revenue retention is way north of 100%, but peel the onion for me. What's gross churn and what's expansion?
Net negative churn is basically zero. I think that, to be fair, we're a very young company with very long SaaS contracts. So in all fairness, whilst I think our clients are in love with us and with our product, they hadn't had the time to churn out yet.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But if you look at, like, let's say a year ago you were doing 700 grand a month, right? You said less than $1 million, right? Of that cohort, what percent of that revenue like either downgraded or churned completely?
None of it.
So you have 0% gross revenue churn.
Yeah, again, we do a good job, but it's not because of the good job that we do. It's because of the minimum term of the contract, which is something that I would very.
What's your minimum? Like you're talking 2-3 years?
Yeah, our minimum is 2 years, but most of our contracts are for more than that.
Okay, interesting. So let me ask you a question. That can actually be very dangerous, and I'll tell you why. I've seen a lot of companies get stuck in something here. If you don't create an excuse, right, to have a conversation to drive expansion revenue, at least quarterly, you really cut your AEs off in terms of driving expansion revenue because you only have that opportunity every 3 years. So how do you manage that?
Oh, no. We do leave room for growth. Basically, the way we price is based on traffic volume tiers. So it's a fixed monthly fee, yes, and a minimum monthly commitment across the minimum 2 years, of course. However, when the client hits a higher tier in terms of the amount of traffic that he's purchasing with our protection, then he automatically qualifies into the next tier.
Okay, so there's a variable component based off impressions, but again, some of the strongest upsell pricing axes that you see companies breaking 100 million in ARR are things related to like feature-based upselling, multiple utility-based upselling. Yours is number of impressions, but there might be other things you know about. Also, like number of seats, right? So what about those other components that are not baked into your contracts?
You're absolutely right. We're now doing a very, very, very aggressive process into acquiring these additional components into our metrics.
Got it. Okay. And then when you look at just that variable, when you look at just the variable component that you've had so far, right, just driving growth based off number of impressions growth, are accounts on average expanding? Are you talking like 5% annually, 10% annually, or more aggressively?
More aggressively, we're talking about around 30% annual.
Oh, wow. Okay, so net revenue retention's then called 130%, something like that.
Something around that.
That's pretty healthy stuff, guy. All right, man, let's wrap up here with the famous 5. Number 1, favorite business book.
Nathan Latka's A Millionaire at 29, something like that.
I was gonna say
how to be a capitalist without any.
I was gonna say you don't have to cater to me. I've already been tough on you. It doesn't get easier from here on out. Yeah. All right. Number two. Is there a CEO you're following or studying?
Yeah, but unfortunately, I have a very, very corny answer here. Jeff Bezos. I think everything he touches turns into gold. I think in terms of creative thinking, unbelievable.
Number 3. What's your favorite online tool for building your company?
It's another. I wish you asked me stuff that I didn't have corny questions to, but basically Asana.
Okay. Number 4. How many hours of sleep you getting every night?
Around 4.
Dang. Okay. How old are you?
34.
And what's your situation? Married, single, kids?
Married, 1 baby daughter, 8 months old.
Okay.
She contributes to
That explains. You have 2 startups. All right.
Exactly.
Last question. What do you wish your 20-year-old self knew?
That it's all good.
Guys, Cheq.ai, helping folks make sure they are getting what they are paying for in the ad tech world. They've got over 100 enterprise customers paying north of 20 grand a month on average. Again, obviously, power law is at play there, but north of $2 million a month in revenue, less than $1 million a month a year ago, so north of 200% year over year growth rate. $30 million raised to date. Again, 25 just fresh about a month ago. 100 folks on the team, 70 engineers, 15 quota carrying sales reps. They optimize for about 5x salesperson profitability, 130% net revenue retention, 7-month payback period as they're acquiring new customers to scale. Guy, thank you so much for taking us to the top.
Nathan, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much.